Hey, it's Danny. So today I'm going to talk about what a project manager really does. So what does a project manager really do? Well, the obvious answer is we manage, right? We manage the budget, we manage resources, we manage risks, we manage issues, and so on and so forth. But how do we do that? What do we actually do all day? Now, I've thought about this a lot recently, and I think it boils down to two things, in my opinion. So I think we facilitate and we communicate. That is what we really do as a project manager. We facilitate and we communicate. Now, I know you could argue that facilitation is communication, and it is really, but I've decided to distinguish the two in this case to help better illustrate how a manager manages. So what is facilitation, first of all? Now, I found a nice definition on vocabulary.com, which I'll just read to you quickly, and it helps to explain what facilitation is in the context of a project manager. So it says, facilitation is the art of moving a group of people through meetings, planning sessions, or training and successfully meeting a specific goal. So I really like that definition. I think it works quite well. And I like the way they refer to it as an art. But I think it's also a skill, and any skill can be learned, practiced, and improved upon with time. Now, I said that through facilitation, we get to understand the thing that needs to be communicated in the first place. And I think with any project, the two big things that need to be communicated are the project scope and the project plan. So, or in other words, what are we going to do and how and when are we going to do it? So let's talk about scope first of all. So as project managers, we have no business defining the project scope by ourselves. It's very rare that you ever have one person defining the scope. Sometimes you'll have a sponsor handing you a high level scope, but even then we have to break it down and we have to establish the boundaries, we have to refine it and get very specific. And we need to do this with other people. We need to do this with our project team. So we need to facilitate this process. So that's the scope, but what about the plan? Again, we can't come up with a plan by ourselves without making a million assumptions. And that's actually not a bad thing to do, so you have something to take along as a proposal to a planning session. But ultimately, we'll need the input from everyone who is delivering the plan and everyone who's going to be impacted by the plan. Now, I actually think that facilitation is probably the most important thing that the project manager does. We facilitate outcomes, be that the scope, be that the plan, be it a decision, or be it the overall delivery. So now that we know what needs to be done through facilitation, it's time that we communicate it. So we're project managers, so we go out and communicate. We communicate the plan, we communicate the scope, we communicate the budget we spent, we communicate the risks and issues and so on and so forth. Now, it's really important, if not critical, that we keep our stakeholders updated with good communication, because if we don't, that can really cause us some issues down the line. So for example, we don't want someone turning up to a go, no-go meeting and blocking our implementation because they didn't know it was coming. Or we don't want to find out that a business team can't support with testing that starts next week because they didn't know it was coming and they can't spare the resource. But if our communication is on point, then we can reduce the risk of these things happening at all. It's a control. Communication is another project management control that reduces the risk of things going wrong. So to summarise, what does a project manager actually do? Well, I like to boil it down to those two things. We facilitate and we communicate. And we know that facilitation is actually a form of communication. So we want to be spending most of our time in forms of communication. So we want to be in meetings, be they face-to-face or virtual. We want to be on the telephone, seeking updates. We want to be on Instant Messenger, chasing up actions. We want to be sending out emails, updating our stakeholders. We need to be spending our time in forms of communication. Now, when we're not spending our time in communication, I think we should be spending our time thinking. That is the other key thing a project manager needs to do. We need time to think, to strategize, to reflect on the plan, to anticipate issues, etc. So number 2 is thinking. And the last thing we need to be doing is administration. Now, unfortunately, every project manager has some level of administration to complete, and that can't be avoided. But only a small amount should be spent on administration. So ask yourself, are you spending most of your time in forms of communication? And if you're not, ask yourself, are the activities that you're doing absolutely critical to the success of the project? And if they are, that's fair enough. but you can ask yourself, can you delegate those actions to someone else? Are there other team members that can pick up some of those things for you to free up some of your time? Or can you get yourself a project PMO or a project assistant to help with some of those tasks? So that's basically today's video. So what does a project manager do? We facilitate and we communicate. And if we want to be the best project managers, we want to make sure our communication and facilitation is the best that it can be. So until the next time, please take care.